Okay, so
beginning recording. Okay, so
host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you enable that?
Let me try that. Okay, so I'll make you a host. So I'm making you a host so you can have everything.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so you should be able to do what you need to do now. So while you're getting ready, welcome everyone. Welcome Victor, Jonathan, Brian, Joshua. So we have some of you joining from Tanzania, Ghana, and Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining this call. So just enjoy the session, ask questions. This is the first series. Hopefully we'll have more series with other builders in the public good network and also in Arbitrum. So take it away, Muntala. Thank you so much for hosting this session. All right, so we're good to go.
All right, thank you very much, Carla. And glad that you facilitated and put this together. Hello, everyone. My name is Muntala, also known as Delegate. And in the space, so I'm excited to join you all to have this conversation. And so a quick one about me. I'm a DAO punk, which means that I'm full-time DAOing. I've been contributing in DAOs for the past like 3 years. I mostly do stuff like DAO operations, governance, project management, and all of that. I'm also the founder of Bankless Africa, now Sovereign Frontier, and more recently, Public Good Africa. I'm somewhat of an impact maxi, and I'm excited about the potential that Web3 have for us as Africans, and also for the world in general. So thank you very much for having me, and let's have a wonderful time. All right, so the way we are going to be doing this is that let's have a very, very interactive session, right? If you have any question, you can write it down. Once I get to some point, you can feel free to ask the question. So mostly we are going to be looking at public goods and Web3, why public goods matter, how Web3 is disrupting public goods and public goods funding. And then we are going to be talking about Arbitrum, right? Or building on Arbitrum. Jonathan, are you saying something?
No, sorry.
Okay. All right. So yes. So then let's get started. All right. So yeah, what are public goods? So public goods are basically products, services, and resources that are available to everyone to use and benefit from, right? So they are goods that they are non-competitive. Everyone is free to use these goods, and they have certain key characteristics. So the first one is that they are non-excludable. So what that means is that me using it doesn't exempt Jonathan from using it, for example, or one group using the goods does not exempt another group from using it, or one person using it does not exempt another person from using it or enjoying the benefits from it, right? They are also non-rivalrous, so that means that the provision of the public goods, there is no rivalry, right, in terms of providing it. So for example, if you look at like open source software, right, a lot of people contribute to open source softwares and all of that. They are also non-diminishing. I put a question mark here because it's not all of the public goods that are non-diminishing. If you take like public transport, for example, the roads, they sometimes diminish, right, as you use them. But so some are non-diminishing, whilst others are semi non-diminishing or diminishing. One of the key things, so another characteristic is that they have collective benefits. So usually public goods have mass benefits, or they benefit a lot of people. So if you take like the society, a lot of people enjoy street lights. So example of public good is street lights. A lot of people enjoy it. So yeah, they usually have like a mass benefit appeal to them. If you take open source software, right, it's available for everyone to use. So it's global, it's available on a global scale. One thing about public goods, though, is that sometimes it's difficult to generate profit when you are building public goods, right? Because of the other characteristics, because you can't prevent people from using it. So if people are using it without paying, how do you, right? How do you generate profit in that situation? So that is one thing, or some of the characteristics of public goods. We would very soon understand how Web3 is helping to disrupt the public goods space in general. So this is mostly on the traditional public goods side of things. There's a rise in a new category of public goods called digital public goods. The digital public goods are goods that are available on the internet, and they are available globally. And so they are available for everyone, for anyone to use it. So example of digital public goods can be open source softwares, right? Public blockchains. So these are all examples of, you can categorize them under digital public goods. So public blockchains such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. Any one of us here today uses or can use Bitcoin at any time without any barrier. Me using Bitcoin or Ethereum does not exempt Carla from using it. Also, the benefits that I enjoy or I get from using Bitcoin does not diminish when Carla is using it, right? So open source software is an example. We also have free educational media, example, Wikipedia and all of that. So you have these knowledge public goods that are on the internet, and they are free to use. So yeah, there's also that. And when you come into like the off-chain world, or the normal world, you have like public parks and fields, you have street lights, and yeah, things like that. So I want to talk briefly about the significance of public goods. And so the first one that I want to touch on is like fundamentally, public goods are crucial to the function of a society, right? I think that we have gotten to, or the significance of public goods can literally be said that they are a basic necessity, or like the way you have like basic human rights, right? Public goods are in a sense in that same category. For a society to function properly, you need proper public goods in place. And so some of these public goods are in the form of very good infrastructure. Infrastructure could be like electricity, right? Just before we had this call, Carla shouted that her light has gone off. And the whole thing is that you can categorize electricity and the provision of like nationwide electricity as a public good. So one of the ways that public goods are funded are through what we call taxes, right? So the government basically is like, when you take the national level, the government is the provider of public goods. And the way the government funds these public goods is through taxes, you know? And so it's expected that once citizens pay their taxes, government should be able to put in place good infrastructure for the benefit of citizens, right? So we have seen that there's literally like a correlation between how great a country or a society or a community's public goods is and how advanced.
That's the what the key does of country. Say, guy, I will do this place. You never go to do it.
Okay, so Sam, can you hear me? If you can hear me, you can mute yourself. All right, okay, so I have muted. All right, so like I'm saying, yeah, we need public goods for the fundamental function of the society. The next one is wide and exponential impact. The nature of public goods are such that when they are done right, they affect a lot of lives, right? They affect a lot of, a typical example again, I would use Bitcoin, which is an open source software. the Bitcoin basically changed the course of humanity in a lot of sense. And when you come to the African context, the amount of impact that Bitcoin has made for Africans and other places in the global south is it's mind-boggling, right? For the first time, we've had access or unlimited access to a global financial system in a way that has never been done in recent history. And this is available in the form of a public good, right? So when public goods are done right, or when you build public goods and build it right, the impact that it can make on society and on human beings sometimes is very, very exponential and very, very huge. So they have wide and exponential impact. The last one that I want to touch on is that they stimulate innovation and economic growth. Again, public goods are linked to certain key infrastructure and things for communities, societies, nations to thrive, right? So if I want to even give a practical example in the African sense, we can just look at basic infrastructure. Again, I'm using electricity because that's very, very crucial, right? We are increasingly living in a digitalized world where people need access to some of these basic amenities and necessities like electricity to be online, to be able to work, right? And these are public goods. So if people have access to these things, that means that they can, they can create stuff on the internet. They can do things. But if you don't have them in place, then it means that people are stifled, right? So people are stifled. I remember there was a time last year where I had to be moving around for weeks because the electricity in my area was not stable. And that affected me a lot in terms of my output, right? If you're in Web3, I mean, you would probably be working with people from other part of the world who have great public good in place. Once you are facing some of these challenges, it affects your productivity so much and your performance so much, but people from other places are not affected the same way, right? And so sometimes it stifles your productivity, it stifles your creativity, it stifles so many things, so you live in this perpetual world of, you really wanting to create, but the infrastructure is not in place for you to create, right? So it's it's so very, very not good when there aren't any good public goods in place. So yeah, it stimulates innovation and economic growth. So yeah, that is some of the, I think, 3 key importance of public goods. So Web3, how is Web3 disrupting public goods? So the first one, or I touched on briefly, is that so traditionally, it's very, very difficult for public goods to make profit, right? If you build open source software and everyone can use the software, why should people pay to use the software, right? So it's sometimes very difficult for builders or creators of these public goods to make profit out of what they have created. Fortunately, Web3 is kind of disrupting that, right? And it is bringing new ways for us to incentivize or generate value for things that we create, even if they are public goods. So again, I'm using a lot of examples like open source software. I'm also going to be using education, free education, right? People create a lot of Web3 content out there and they get grants for it, so one of the key or some of the key ways that Web3 is helping with this is tokenization and protocol designs, right? So the Web3 has given us new value capture systems to be able to, to capture value for the public goods that we create. So you can create an open source software today, deploy it on the blockchain, and then tokenize. And this is a great way of rewarding the team for the work that they are doing, but also it's a way that people can continuously fund themselves to continuously build public goods that make impact in society, right? So that is that. There's also new resource allocation mechanisms. So beyond also having new value capture systems, blockchain also have given us new ways that we can allocate resources. So one of the other things or characteristics that I mentioned is that sometimes traditionally it's very difficult to fund public goods sustainably, right? So because they are not generating profit, there's no inflow or there's no outflow. So there's no inflow for some people. How do they put their outflow into you when you are not generating profit, right? So Web3 is also disrupting that in terms of making it possible for us to engineer new grant mechanism or resource allocation mechanisms to be able to drive resources to some of the people who are building these public goods, or even to some of the public goods itself. And so some of these ways include quadratic funding, retroactive public goods funding, and impact markets, right? If you are in the Web3 grants space or public good grant space, chances are you've heard of quadratic funding. Also, this is retroactive public goods funding, recently popularized by Optimism so much. In fact, there's been very recently, Arbitrum also experimented with something like that with their Arbitrum Citizen Round. So yeah, so that is that. Again, most of the things that I'm talking about, I'm touching on surface, and the idea is that it will pique your interest, right, for you to delve deeper into some of these mechanisms. So the last one is also community and collective intelligence, right? Instead of having government build some of these public good infrastructure and failing miserably in places like Africa, there's now a new movement of people who are now building some of these infrastructure from the ground up, right? So again, Web3 is enabling us to do this. A typical example is Public Goods Africa, which is a new initiative to help fund developers and builders harnessing Web3 for impact in African communities. So yeah, we've gotten to a place where we've gotten the technology to be able to build from the ground up or make impacts from the ground up public good wise. So that is another thing that Web3 has given us when it comes to public goods. All right, so my thought or my last thought on public goods is that I believe that public goods and public goods funding is one of the key ways we get to mass adoption and exponential impact with Web3 in Africa. In Africa, so if you are not
You don't do the
involved,
street stuff.
if you are not involved in the
Nice.
Web3 public goods space, I would highly encourage you to get in. So how do you get started? I think one of the simplest way to get started is to become a donor during some of these public goods grants rounds. So the very popular one we have, of course, we have Gitcoin. So I would highly encourage you to get like a Gitcoin passport. If you already have a Web3 passport, just go to the gitcoin.co, connect to the passport, create a passport for yourself. And then join the Public Good Africa community. There's a lot of resources that happens or goes on over there. And there is a new, there's the current grants round is coming very soon. And so you'll be able to start donating to people who are building projects or people who are building stuff that qualify as public goods. So yeah, so that is a very, very quick very quick way of getting started. I know that the time is against, and that's why I'm rushing through, but just note down your questions. If I finish and you have any questions, you can definitely ask. So the next section is building on Arbitrum, and this is literally like one slide, right? I don't know if Carla will add something to this, but once I'm done, but it's I just simplified this whole this
I
whole
don't text me
section.
for the NG.
Yeah.
But
I should do another.
this
This
whole
is
section.
in 4 minutes.
Okay, so I think
What I want
there
to
are
do
people
is,
here. Isaac?
Muntala, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying, sorry to cut you short, but this call is expiring in 4 minutes. So what I
Oh,
want to do is I'm going to end it now and then send a new link to our emails so we can all just join with that new link. So since we finished the public goods part, we're about to go to the Arbitrum part. This part has to do with being able to access grants on Arbitrum, being able to understand Arbitrum ecosystem and build on it and all. So I'm going to send a link to our emails. If you're all registered, you're going to get the link for the new meeting to the emails because this one is ending in 3 minutes. And I don't think it will be cool for us to cut it short while we are already in it. So since we finished public goods, we're going to move on to Arbitrum. So I think we'll start in about 4 minutes. I'll set up the call now and send the link to the emails. Is that fine?
All right. Thank you, Carla. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you. So this meeting should end in a bit. I'll end it now.